All right, so I will kick it off. I did already kind of a brief intro. You guys know I've been a part of the group for a year. I have a full-time job, I think, just like most of y'all, which keeps me extremely busy. In my W-2, I'm director of loan servicing for a auto finance company. And so I oversee a call center of, we hold about 750 people here in Dallas, and we have 1,200 in the Mesa market. And that portfolio size, about $18 billion a month is what I oversee. And so that in and of itself keeps me super busy. But, about 2.5 years ago, I got the itch to get into real estate, just like everybody here. And I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. A buddy recommended it, and I read that, and that was pretty much all she wrote. So been investing for 2.5 years. Throughout that journey up to this point, we have 7 doors. And we've done a lot of different things. And so our first deal we ever did was owner finance off market. I had no money at that point. I think I had like $5,000 to my name. And that was the first deal we did. Second deal I ever did was a house hack, duplex here in Richardson, Texas. And we house hacked that, and we also Airbnb'd it. So I travel a lot for work. So when we weren't there, we Airbnb'd our side. And then we were really working on like our fire numbers. So we actually Airbnb'd a room for like 6 months while we were living there. And then I've done 2 Brrrrs, which I'm going to talk about this evening. I've done an owner occupied to rental. So buying a deal that was good, lived in it, turned it to a rental, and then done some private money and partnerships, which we're going to jump into the rest of the evening. So that's a little bit about me. Through just a few deals, we've done quite a few different methods, which I think has allowed us to be prepared to do more, hopefully. So I'm going to talk about 2 deals tonight. And for those of you who are close with me and been in the group, I've been talking about one Brrrr that was a heavy undertaking for quite a while, and then one that was pretty easy. So it's going to be kind of the tale of 2 tapes that I'm going to share. But like our steps to the Brrrr process. So everybody on the call, I assume, is pretty familiar with Brrrr. We took a slightly unconventional route, and I'll share that. But obviously, both of these deals, we bought off the MLS, and we used private money on both. It was our first foray into private money. One rehab was extremely intensive. We actually added a second floor and took it to the studs, which we'll talk about. And then the other one was super easy. Like, it was floors and paint, and it was awesome. And then after the rehab, instead of renting, we actually refinanced first, which was great. It allowed us to move quickly and get our money back to our investors. So we used a small local bank to refinance both properties, which we'll talk about. And then on the renting side, we actually implemented systems on both of these houses that were super helpful. We actually hired a virtual assistant to do all of our listing, pre-screening, all of the heavy lifting. And then now we're in the phase to repeat and get back to work. So I'll jump in and I'll talk about the deals. So like I said, it's 2 deals, and I'm going to do my best to separate them. And so the first one on the left-hand side is the Garfield house. It was a 3-2. It was almost 1,500 square foot. It was a value add property. This place was nasty. Cockroaches, mice. I mean, it smelled terrible. Like it was terrible. And I had no interest in doing it when we walked it, but our general contractor was like, "Hey, let's look in the attic." And when we looked in the attic, there was a huge amount of space, and there was 600 square foot for us to add on. So that made it an attractive deal for us. And so we found it on the MLS. The purchase price was 40 grand, and we used private money and a partnership. And then the Franklin property was super easy. And I did both of these at the same time. And, or we did them at the same time. Franklin, similar, 3-2, almost 1,300 square foot. This one was interesting. It was a tired landlord. They just needed a cosmetic rehab. We found it on the MLS as well. Purchase price was $100,000. Diego actually helped me on this one, which we'll talk about. And then we used private money and a partnership as well. So that's kind of the high level download of both of the properties. So now I want to talk about finding the deals. And this is where I want to jump into a little bit of the tactics of like, hey, here's how we find deals on the MLS. Like most people believe finding deals on MLS is tough, which it undoubtedly is, but especially finding BRRRRs that are deeply enough discounted to where you can turn around and pull all your money out. And so I'm going to talk about how we did it and the criteria that we use. And I think that if you're on this call and you're looking to buy your first deal or your second deal, I think these steps could be somewhat useful to you. And so the first thing for us is we look to identify our target market. In this property, it was in Northwest Oklahoma, but we also look in Oklahoma City and then the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Number one thing we always look for is days on market. And so I know Belen is on the call and they invest in Oklahoma, so they probably see higher days on market than what a lot of you guys see in Austin or California. But for me in Oklahoma, I'm looking for properties 90 days or greater on market. Average days on market in Oklahoma where I invest is about 32 days as of right now. And so we're looking for properties that are three times that amount. So they're sitting there, they haven't sold. We want to go there because number one, we feel like we have an opportunity to leverage that to get a deeper discount. And for one reason or another, somebody hasn't bought it. And so for us, that's an advantage and something we want to target. And then the second thing we look at is list price. I look at the MLS every day. I probably spend at least 30 minutes a day, and I look for houses that have like obscure pricing. So in a neighborhood where it commands 100,000, we're going to look for houses that are, for sale for 80. Why is it 80,000? Everything there is 100. So that's what we did on both of these properties. And then ultimately what we do is we make an offer. We've made quite a few offers without even seeing the property. And so those are the steps we follow. But to tie them specifically into these deals, the Garfield house was on the market for over 100 days. And so we had seen it on the MLS over and over, and I really didn't want to do anything with it. But I had a buddy who wanted to partner, and he was like, hey, let's go look at it. And so we went and looked at it. And as I mentioned earlier, it was nasty as could be. I wanted nothing to do with it. At the 1,500 square foot, it wasn't worth it. But when our contractor opened up the attic, we're like, holy crap, there's at least 600 square foot to add on up there. Like for us, that was an opportunity for us to have a BRRRR where like we could get out with no money. And so this one met the criteria. It was over 100 days on market, and it was about 30 grand under the normal like list price in that neighborhood. So this neighborhood usually goes for about 70, 80, sometimes 100 grand. And so that's how we found the Garfield one. And then on the Franklin house, it was on the market for 120 days. It was about to expire. We had just gotten back from Florida from the Rat Race retreat, and I was super motivated after that trip. And I called my realtor, and this house is 2 doors down from my mom. And I said, hey, I'd like to make an offer on this house. And she goes, it went under contract. It's like, damn. All right, on to the next one. But I let her know. I was like, hey, call me if it falls out of contract. 3 weeks later, my realtor called me, and she was actually the listing agent as well. And she's a really strong realtor. Anyways, it was listed for 125,000, and we offered 100,000, and it needed a new roof, so we asked for a new roof. And the owner accepted at 100,000 and put a new roof on for us prior to closing. So that was pretty sweet. And like I said, we found both of these using that criteria, like high days on market. Garfield, the price didn't make sense. Franklin was priced right. It was priced at 125, but we just lowballed them at 100 and asked for the roof, and they took it. So one thing I would tell you guys is don't be afraid to make a lowball offer. Making 100, I was very uncomfortable for. I was like, there's no way. And I have pissed off a lot of sellers with lowball offers where they don't even counter, but I think it's a part of it, and it worked in this scenario. So that's how we found these deals. And so I'll move on. I don't know if there's any questions about going through the MLS, but if there is, Diego or anybody, you guys can jump in and ask me.
You're good. You're good.
Cool. So we found the deals on the MLS, and then we raised private money on both of these. Both of these deals, we went in with no money of our own. So yeah, so as far as raising the money, like I said, on both of these deals, we raised 100% of the funds. And so I'll walk through the steps of how we raised the money and then how we specifically used it in these instances. First thing we do when raising private money is we identify lenders. So last year, about a year ago, before I even considered using private money, I put together a spreadsheet of all my family and all my friends that have money. And then since that point, I update that spreadsheet monthly. And so I have like this running spreadsheet of 30 people that either are friends, family, or I know are high net worth or have good liquidity or savvy investors that I would be comfortable reaching out to, that I have some level of relationship. So that's what I leverage in both these deals. And then second thing we do is once we identify those folks, we'll bring the offer to the table. So we'll do one of two things. We'll either bring a PowerPoint, depending on how much money we need, or I'll do a high-level email. And so for the Garfield house, we were asking for $40,000 for the purchase, and then we were asking $67,000 for the rehab. So we put together a PowerPoint and presented that to potential investors. For the Franklin house, it was slam dunk. I already had an appraisal because the other deal had fallen out. I just put together a high-level email and gave that to Diego, and he was comfortable giving us the money, and I'll talk about that a little later. Yeah, so once we bring the offering to the table, like in the instance of Garfield, we're asking for $107,000, which is a lot of money to somebody I didn't necessarily know super well. So we sent the PowerPoint to him, we scheduled a call, and we pitched it. And then they liked the deal, so we structured it with the private money. And then, what I would say when you're doing the private money, I think it's important to understand what the individual wants. So on Garfield, they literally just gave us the cash with the promissory note, no collateral, anything. So we personally guaranteed it. So what that means is that they gave us the money. It was a straight cash loan with no collateral attached to it. In Felipe's situation, he's rather smart.
Diego, right?
He took, Diego, he took
I'm the smart one.
You are the smart one. Diego took a first lien on the house, and I think we were asking for $100,000. Diego gave us 50. This is how smart this guy is. He gave us 50 and took a first lien, and this house is worth 120 as is. And so for whatever reason, we defaulted. Diego would get $120,000 asset for $50,000. And so, sharp guy.
Yeah.
But on both of these deals, I do want to share some details. Garfield, we borrowed $107,000, private money, promissory note, personal guarantee at 8%. Franklin, we needed $100,000. Diego was a lifesaver, and it came through for $50,000 at 3 points and 10%. And then I called another buddy for $20,000 at 3 points and 10%, with no collateral, just a personal guarantee. And then my partner brought $35,000 to the deal. And so that's how we structured both of those deals with the private money.